This is a Film Stories original podcast. We made this.
Welcome to the X-Cast. The truth is in here. I'm your host, Sarah Blair, and I'm back with Agents Einstein and Miller for this episode of Alone. Just kidding. It's Kurt and Carl.
Einstein and Miller. We're not there yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I thought we could just kind of skip ahead. If we get to Einstein and Miller, we won't have to do season 9, right? Is that how it works?
That is true. Yep. But season 9, there's a big fan base out there for season 9, haven't you heard? Oh, man. Next year is going to be so tough on the X-Cast, isn't it?
I think it's just going to be us three. We're just going to have
Nobody listening.
Yeah. We're in this together, guys. For now, we're still in season 8, barely. This is the 19th episode of season 8. Can you believe it, guys? It's kind of amazing. I mean, it feels like the season just started yesterday. Couple days ago.
Well, technically behind the scenes it did.
No, it's a
because we recorded it. It went live to people a couple of weeks ago when we recorded this, isn't it? So
it's one of those. We've got a fair chunk of the season recorded, though, haven't we? As we are sat here today, like we've sort of we're past the halfway point. We're recording out of order, so like there are some episodes that come before this that haven't been done. We're just getting this out of the way because we're all kind of mutually around today, aren't we? So,
nothing better to do.
Yeah, nothing better to do. But it's just because of the way we divide it up, isn't it? It's like, because we all are responsible for our own sort of chunk of episodes. It's like a burden shared or something. So, like, the end of the season comes around fairly quick, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I know we're joking about season 9. It's a lot different beast when you run like the time is now for 3 seasons, and you pretty much do it on your own compared to doing a season with 3 people. It's a big difference, and having that problem thirded, then that's always a good thing. So and as you say, it kind of makes you feel like the season goes by really quickly, and you get to enjoy the episodes you're not on as well, which is great. So it's still a lot of fun to have for us at time of recording. But yeah, it's been a good show so far. Really enjoyed the stuff I've done already. So it's all good.
Same here. Okay, Alone. This is the 19th episode of the season out of 21. This is the last Monster of the Week episode, right, guys? Of season 8.
And the last one for David Duchovny to appear in until season 10.
Of course.
I mean,
it's the end of an era. And it's got that sort of feel about it, hasn't it? That kind of an era vanishing, elegiac kind of feel.
It does a little bit, yeah.
So, yeah. I hadn't thought about that, Kurt. Yeah, it's the last standalone with Mulder until what? Until Founder's Mutation.
It'll be Founder's Mutation, yeah.
Quasi-myth arc as well. Yeah. Wow.
Here we are. But I kind of was looking at the day that this episode was originally aired. It was 13th of May, 2001. Kind of dropped the ball there. We could have scheduled to record on that day, perhaps. But we're doing it.
What, on 13th of May 2001?
No, 2022.
Well, we've got to remember, we probably wouldn't have got it for an extra month or 2 after that in the UK. So
it's true. It's fine. It's fine.
It's still significant, isn't it? I think it would have been at least. I wonder if we've got it on here actually.
It always comes up on the Wikipedia, doesn't it? Like the UK air date.
May 6, 2001. Where does it come up on the actual 14th of June 2001?
About a month and a half later ish. It's not bad. I think it was longer than that at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Much longer. Yeah. Early days was quite a significant amount of time. So
this episode was written by Frank Spotnitz and directed by Frank Spotnitz. So that's exciting. We love Frank.
Yeah, I think isn't it his first directorial?
It is, and then he follows up with Daimonicus, I believe, in season 9.
Right.
I
Okay.
think that's it for the X-Files. I'm not sure whether he's been directing stuff on his other shows off the top of my head. He may well have done, but yeah, Alone was his first effort, I believe. Yep.
I really enjoy this episode. How about you guys?
Do you know, it's one of those episodes where I don't really pay that much attention to, but when I watch it, I quite enjoy it. So I think it's fine. It has some interesting, because it is kind of like after the really strong run of things like This Is Not Happening and stuff like that, and Per Manum and all of those episodes up to Vian, and it's just an interesting place for it. So it's kind of melancholy in a lot of ways. And yeah, when I watch it, I enjoy it. I think it's one of those ones that's maybe a little bit easier to forget, even though there is some moments in it that are quite memorable. But the episode as a whole isn't anything amazing, but enjoyable. I'd give it like a 6.5, 7 out of 10 for me. I think it's it's definitely watchable.
No, I would go along with that. I think 6 out of 10 is what I was thinking. Kind of solid. It's a bit of an empty calories episode, is kind of the way I would describe it. It's like there's some fun to be had with things like the nods to older episodes. But like, are a lot of them really that meaningful? I feel a bit like one of Pavlov's dogs, when I'm, okay, that's a reference to Tombs, I understand that. But like, does it go much beyond that? I don't know. I think it's like there's too much going on in this episode in some ways, and also not enough. It's like the focus for me is split a bit too much between all the main characters. So you have Doggett with Layla Harrison, you've got Scully and Mulder have got their own things going on. And I think that's understandable. Like, you want to have Mulder in there because the Coveney's not going to be around for much longer. But I feel like the focus is taken off of Doggett a bit too much for my liking. For the episode to really land, I think his storyline needed to be a bit more kind of gripping and compelling, and I don't think it is. When I say there's not enough going on, I feel like it's quite a weak case. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's the fact that it evokes these other episodes is not the problem, because other episodes in the series have done that too. But like, there's no real surprise or intrigue to any of those goings on with that creature. A lot of it on a visual level, I'm not like that fond of it either. Like, like Spotnitz gets a bit carried away, I think, with these like POV shots from the monster's point of view and swooping in, and the camera like twirls around and all these kind of things. I don't know. I just feel like his enthusiasm got the better of him a bit. But no, I think it's quite watchable. It's fairly watchable. For me, it's an example of how the quality falls away a bit towards the end of season 8. To be honest, I think it's a season that starts off really strongly, and then when you get into the back half, the characterization is not as compelling overall. And I think this episode is an example of that. So yeah, 6 out of 10, maybe 6.5 if I'm feeling generous. That felt quite harsh. Sorry. So come and Sarah, tell us what you like about it.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, you guys, but my rating is like way higher than yours.
It's unbelievable.
For season 8. I mean, I never thought we were going to be here for this, but it's happening. I'm going to give it like an 8. It's a fun episode. I think it harkens back to kind of, some of my favorite episodes, Quagmire, Detour. It's got the cryptid monster in it. And I do very much enjoy the throwbacks to the previous episodes. And I like that it has that classic kind of X-Files feel to it. Like, I agree with everything you said, Carl. I don't think you're wrong. I do see that, and I acknowledge that, yeah, it's not a very strong episode at all, but it's fun to watch, and it's fun to kind of get back into that sort of Vancouverish feel that we haven't really seen in quite a bit on the show. So, yeah, I mean, fun, weird. Who doesn't love a weird monster? I mean, the monster is like super weird, like it's gross, it's fun to watch.
I think that's fair enough. And I think, to be fair, when I was listening to Frank Spotnitz's commentary track on this episode, he sort of says, look, the focus here for me wasn't the case, it was the characters. He kind of felt that like the case was kind of incidental to having a bit of fun with Doggett and Harrison and having these things for Mulder and Scully to do. So I think that's a fair take on it. It's just whether like that means, for me, that means some aspects of it are not entirely satisfying, but I can see what he means, and I can see why I can see where you're coming from as well, Sarah. So yeah, Kurt, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just on what you're saying there, Carl, something that I'll kind of really latched onto is when you said the Doggett focus isn't really there, and the fact that this is the last monster of the week of the season, and the basic premise of this story is that John Doggett is alone and he hasn't got anyone to back him up, and Layla Harrison tries but fails, and she's going to need a stronger partner, and that's no detriment to Layla Harrison. She just was like over enthusiastic. But you're not getting. You would think they would focus a little bit more on that, and especially given the title, where it does feel there's like a little bit too much of, just Mulder just sitting around in a car, eating sunflower seeds. It's kind of like a little bit like, all right, we've got David Duchovny, we need to make as much use of him as possible. Apparently, Skinner's scenes have been cut quite significantly as well. There was like it overrun by 9 minutes.
We lost 9 minutes.
Skinner scenes that have been cut. They lost 9 minutes.
Yeah,
yeah, I didn't think of that, but yeah. So they lost it was overrun. So yeah, and I do enjoy watching it. I do think it's interesting and good to watch. There's some great moments. I'm sure we'll talk about them, but yeah, I think that's probably the thing. I quite like the kind of ensemble-ness of the last few episodes, and even like the buddy cop thing in Vienna. Them having to work together and getting that handshake over, but the handshake. It is almost like the episode where they need to let go of the X-Files in some ways, and
after what happened in Vienna.
Yeah, and it's just it's doing that to an effect, but it's not giving Doggett enough to kind of grapple with. It's more just Doggett doing what he did in Medusa, really, in a lot of ways. So yeah, that's where I land on it.
Where do you think IMDb lands? Do you have any guesses?
Right. I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion because I recorded Vienna today with Tony and I saw this. So I don't want to pretend I can pull the number out of thin air because I know exactly what the score is. So
okay.
Yeah.
Kurt.
Okay.
It's on you.
I haven't. So I'm going to say because of some of the callbacks and the kind of the fan fiction element of it, that I'm going to go with straight 8.
So close. 7.9. Yep.
Ooh, right.
Nearly
okay.
there. You nearly made it. And that's out of 2,384 votes at the time of this recording. So not far off.
And that puts it level with Vienna and Permanum, I think. And it's about 10th for the season.
Well, that's wrong.
Too high, you think?
Yeah, Vienna and Permanum are both superior episodes,
I agree with that.
So I wouldn't put it in there.
I'd have it probably 21 episodes for the season. This would be probably 16th, 17th, I would say, for me.
Right.
But it's that low, but it's a good season where even the worst episode, there's only a couple of like really clunky episodes, I think. For me, it's like Shore Kill Salvage, and then everything above that is at least solid,
Yeah.
Let's do the summary real quick so that we are all on the same page with this episode. With Scully on maternity leave, Doggett is assigned to an inexperienced new partner who is obsessed with the X-Files. Together, they are trapped in an underground tunnel by a creature that can assume a human appearance and uses snake venom to blind its victims. Was it snake venom? I never really was clear on that. I thought it was just venom. I didn't know it was specifically snake venom, but here we are. I mean, it was like a blend of a whole bunch of things, right?
I literally watched the episode 25 minutes ago, and I couldn't tell you.
No, you're right though, Kurt, because it really doesn't linger. Like the details of this don't really linger, do they? It's things like the final scene does in the hospital. Maybe that opening scene in the X-Files office does, but then a lot of the stuff around it doesn't really stick, does it? For me,
no, definitely.
I don't know what's wrong with you guys. I remember it perfectly.
Well, you should know. Is it snake venom then, Sarah?
All right, let's talk about this episode we don't remember, guys. All right, so let me just refresh your memory. Scene 1, the teaser. It's a windy night, dark and stormy night, and there's an old man and a young man.
Yeah, okay. I don't know why I found that funny.
Who are in a cabin together. And we understand that the young man is the son and the older man is the father, and he is trying to explain to his son that something is going on that he can't explain. And he needs to make sure all the doors are locked, right?
Yeah.
You know, checking the locks, making sure everything's all right. And then...
Dun, dun, dun. The window's open.
Oops. And it's so high up. How did this... it's fine. It was windy. Maybe it blew open. I don't know. So something gets in to the house, and the old man sees it, and he's got a heart monitor on, which really adds to the tension because the heart rate goes up and it starts beeping faster. You're just like, what's gonna happen? I don't know. This is so tense. Yeah. And something attacks him. So,
do you think this teaser goes on a bit too long?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I think that goes back to when I was saying like a couple of aspects of the episode aren't that satisfying. And I don't fully accept what Spotnet says about, well, the case wasn't my focus, but then you still have to sit through the teaser. You still get like revelations at the end of some of the acts, which are about the case, which don't really like add up to much. So yeah, a little bit long maybe. And I feel like the monster attack shot that ends the teaser is not that effective. Do you know what I mean?
I thought that the tail was quite effective.
Oh yeah,
the quick glance of the tail, I thought that was quite effective. Yeah,
it's interesting that like this is the closest season 8 comes to a comedy episode, really, and it's not really that comic at all, is it? Like it starts with a teaser here that's not funny in the slightest. Do you know what I mean? So that's interesting. It's the first season for a long time that we haven't had an out and out comedy outing, isn't it?
Unless you well, we did have a comedy, didn't we? We had a comedy in
and
Roadrunners, because that's hilarious.
Apparently so.
I knew you were going to say that.
I don't laugh all the way through Roadrunners, but when the worm, the slug gets thrown onto the bus floor and it looks at the camera, is still the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's like, oh.
I love when she walks in and she's cradling the gigantic slug that's like 12 times bigger than it was when it was crawling in the Scully. Baby Jesus slug.
The problem is that Sarah's got in my head when I watch that episode now. When we get to like the slow-mo at the end and Doggett like blasting away at it, all I can think of is Sarah watching it and talking to me about the episode. Like, you literally have ruined it for me. I hope you're happy with yourself.
I'm so sorry. Oh man. We've got another cryptid here that we have to deal with, you guys. So that's the teaser. We don't know what's happening, but clearly some kind of weird monster is happening. And then we go to Scully in the basement office, and she's collecting some things out of the desk. Can you guys remember there's 3 things. Can you name what they are? Pop quiz, hotshots.
Go on, Kate, you go for it.
Who's going first? The Koyan.
From.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dreamland. Queequeg's thing tag, and the Apollo 11
medallion
chain thing medallion. Yeah.
So you do remember this episode?
I remember this scene and the end scene. These are really good scenes. I really enjoy these scenes.
It is. Yeah. It really is. Do you think? I'm curious. Do you think? Since this is technically Mulder's desk, do you think he's the one that saved Queequeg's collar chain, or do you think it was Scully? And why is it in the FBI desk? Why isn't it at her home?
Well, I mean, don't you... Like, I've got a desk here from, like, obviously working at home to some extent over the last couple of years, but, like, just loads of random crap is in my desk drawer here. Do you know what I mean? Like, stuff just piles up, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So
I need to find him, but I've got a little Orville. A little, like, sort of... puppet Orville, which was a thing in my drawer at work. So I've got random stuff in. I haven't got Fluke Man. I've got Fluke Man here. I've got Fluke Man.
I would assume Scully has kept those things. Wouldn't you think?
I would imagine. I'm wondering why her beloved dog's tag is in the work desk.
Poor Queequeg.
If that's something, I mean, we've got Java's collar in a sacred place up on a hook that's, treasured. He was our precious pet.
Do you think it would have...
I mean, she didn't have it for 18 years like we did, but...
Do you think it would have been evidence at one point? And because that was part of the Quagmire investigation, wasn't it? And then maybe she's taken it from like a case file or something and kept it in the desk.
I would like to believe that, how Mulder was very kind of, a little bit more casual about Queequeg's death. He made it very clear Queequeg was not his favorite creature in the world. Yeah. I would like to believe that he kept that tag as a sentiment that he actually did care, or that he cared more, he cared about Scully. It's like a representation of, his care for Scully. So
could be.
That's what I want to believe about it anyway.
No, I quite like the callbacks in this scene though. It's in some of the later scenes when it's Layla Harrison bringing stuff up. I feel like they're a bit more just kind of window dressing, but here I think they're quite resonant, to be honest. And in general, it's a good scene, isn't it? Like I think Spotnitz was talking on this commentary track about he has Scully kind of expressing his own feelings towards Doggett or Robert Patrick in sense of there's this. Like there are these real world ideas that are being channeled through the characters, which is kind of interesting. So I think this gets us off to a nice start here, and it's nice to see Doggett kind of alone there for a moment, isn't it? And then he thinks Scully's coming back, but it's not her.
It is maybe a bit too much of a reaction when he comes back, and it's like, I said I've been in for 5 minutes and you're hurry. But it's like, oh, well, it's not quite there, but I get why they've done it from an audience perspective. Yeah. So I do forgive it. That's probably the weakest part of this scene. I do like the general that we've probably all had this with people at work where people are going off maternity and stuff like that. They're going off onto their new adventure and
you don't know if they're coming back. You don't always.
You don't know if they're coming back or in what capacity they're coming back in if they do.
That's what's happening here, isn't it? Like they knew Duchovny was not going to be back for season 9, and I think Spotnitz said they knew that if the season 9 did happen, which I think may still have been slightly unclear at this point, or when he's writing it anyway, they didn't. He sort of knew that Scully wouldn't be assigned to the X-Files in that eventuality, so he's kind of writing the scene with that in mind. When Scully doesn't answer Doggett and that kind of thing as she leaves. Yeah. So I like it. That's good.
Yeah. And that's got to be tough for her because, the X-Files became not just Mulder's quest, but her quest too. And to have to face this possibility of not coming back, it's got to be tough for her. And I like how Gillian Anderson portrayed that.
Yeah, and it's right through the episode, isn't it, as well? Because later on, when she's talking to Mulder and saying she's just got this weird feeling, I don't know if it's hormones or, the fact that someone's always had Doggett's back, and that's the kind of stuff I'd like to have seen a bit more of, the stuff about Doggett not having a partner or having someone to look after him and stuff like that. Yes, it does portray that with Layla Harrison, but I think that's the general consensus of the episode, is to do that. But I also like the fact that, there is a bit of... kind of on the hug, for example, the fact that Scully's going, I wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have found Mulder, that kind of, that stoic thing that Doggett has been doing over the last year, and I like that as well, the fact that, it instantly, when I watched that part of the episode where they gave the hug, my brain immediately went to the very first meeting of them when Scully chucked the water over him, so just that general arc of the season's been really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think, it occurred to me when you say, you thought of the water and everything, when Layla Harrison comes in, and I immediately thought of Mulder and Scully in the pilot. And, like how different that introduction is between how Mulder and Scully meet, and there's like, insta chemistry between them, whether it's platonic or not. just on screen, they immediately, are going to be partners.
Yeah.
And
well,
definitely.
I always think as well. I know, obviously the history about Layla Harrison, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I always think it's almost proto-pilot in that what the studios were after in the first place. It's someone that would look like Layla Harrison rather than Scully, and it's also that kind of feel to me as well. There's like almost like a little play on that as well.
In terms of what? Do you just mean like being blonde or something? Yeah. Or what do you mean?
Yeah, just the perception of what the studio might have been after, 8-9 years ago, and and it was obviously the fact that Carter pushed Gillian Anderson through that. I mean, she does a great job. It's I think actually Layla works really well in this episode, and the way that she's portrayed. So I think it's really good the way that's done. Maybe not less so in Scary Monsters, but we'll get there next year.
Eventually, yeah. It's a bit more mean-spirited in that episode, isn't it? And the problem there is, like, in that episode, it's all about sort of the subtext is the fans won't accept Doggett and Reyes, but, like, the show hadn't really been good enough for fans to accept them, do you know what I mean? So, like, they're sort of mean-spirited, but not really having the pedigree to back it up in that episode, yeah. I think here it works fairly well. It's quite a clever idea on the idea of a character's being replaced, and she's obviously like the fan surrogate, isn't she? Which becomes evident when she starts to name check all these case reports that she's read and all that. And I think Jolie Jenkins plays her quite well, to be honest. So yeah, I think. Go on.
You can also think about Jolie Jenkins and the auditor being working in the same department, can't you, from season 7.
But she's like a fan. She's into it, and
she's a fan. He's not a fan.
What's his name? He had a funny character name, didn't he? I can't remember what it was. Yeah.
I can't remember. What was It was Requiem, wasn't it?
I thought.
Can you imagine them hanging out in the office together, just having coffee, their morning coffee?
I think that what surprised me going back to this episode was she doesn't immediately start reeling off the X-Files homages or references, does she? Actually, it waits a little bit until you get to the crime scene. So they keep it in check to begin with, which I thought was probably a good move, considering we just had the quite meaningful stuff with Doggett and Scully. But yeah, so I think it's quite a clever idea, isn't it? And Sarah, you've been doing a bit of research on the real Layla Harrison, haven't you?
I went back and reread some of Layla Harrison's fanfics that she wrote. And I remember at the time being a big fan of hers. And she's one of my favorite fanfic authors. So, yeah, she had some really good fanfics. If y'all, I think that somebody posted a link in the basement. But if you just Google Layla Harrison X-Files fanfiction, it comes up.
No, I haven't read any of her fanfiction. I don't really read fanfiction much, to be honest. But I think it's a nice tip of the hat to her, isn't it, to have named the character after her. And to have it be a character who's like we've said, kind of the fan surrogate is kind of nice. Yeah. So I think Spotnitz said he had corresponded or spoken to the real Layla Harrison on one occasion. So it's quite an affectionate thing to do, I think. And I think that's partly why people don't like the Scary Monsters follow-up. And so it's nice to do it the way it's done here, and then it's a bit more mean-spirited, like we said, in Scary Monsters. So something we can talk about in the future, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that, when we were just talking about the keychain, to kind of skip ahead a little bit. But, Doggett takes the keychain from Scully, but then he passes it on to her, to Layla Harrison. Sorry, not Scully. I think that was a really nice gesture.
I really like that. I do. It always kind of moves me when he does it. Says, no, I think there's somebody else that needs it. It's like, get in there. Just goes to show how good a guy Doggett is. He knows that somebody would appreciate it more.
It is nice. No, I agree. Right.
I don't think if he'd been given like maybe a NASCAR toy, he probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, I kind of like that it's sort of symbolic of handing everything over to the fans. Like, this kind of belongs to you too, and that's sweet. But I know she wasn't meant to. But what are your thoughts on Layla Harrison teaming up with Doggett for season 9? Like the whole boom, Doggett and Harrison. on the cases? Do you think
Couldn't
it
have been
would
much
work?
worse, could it? No, I'm joking. No, my instinct is that she wouldn't really work in that context of being a lead character. As a kind of one-off gimmick, maybe with more sporadic appearances. Like, obviously we see her a second time, but potentially we could have seen a little bit more of her, where, you know, every 4 or 5 episodes or something, you know, similar to how we used to see the Lone Gunman every so often. Maybe that could have worked, but it's too much of a contrived, gimmicky thing for it to be a lead character, don't you think, Kurt? I don't know.
I think because she's kind of designed in a light-hearted way, I think it would have been difficult to, and especially some of the season 8 being quite obviously body horror kind of specific, and she does really, really well in the scenes in the underground section. But you can imagine the show kind of playing on the things like the carrying of the gun and, you know, saying, Layla, the safety's off. You know, to make sure you turn the safety on. So stuff like that. I think the lightheartedness would work for a while, I think, but you'd have to develop, and I'm not sure whether or not that would work or not.
I think that's a good point, because again, on his commentary, Spotnitz said that he liked Jolie Jenkins in this role because he said she kind of brought out the Clint Eastwood in Robert Patrick. And I think maybe what he's referring to is there's one of the Dirty Harry sequels where Harry Callahan's paired up with a woman cop, and there's that kind of like chalk and cheese pairing aspect to it. And yeah, I just wonder how much you could really do with that before it gets a bit old. Do you know what I mean? And like, how much can you do with the self-referentiality before that gets old too? She can't go through every episode like name-checking six or 7 other X-Files cases, can she? If she was going to be a full character,
she'd have to learn pretty quickly, wouldn't she? Just like, and I think she does though. I do think that they do, but in this episode they do that though, don't they? So,
well, no, she kind of makes the breakthrough, doesn't she? In this,
yeah. Somehow, somewhere,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
Can you imagine her down there with the slide projector going through everything? Doggett comes in with his coffee in the morning. She's like,
"How you doing, Layla?"
Yeah. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah.
Would you have liked to see her more?
I think it would have potentially worked if she had not been quite so green. I think if she had just a little bit more experience and knowledge. Obviously, I think Reyes would have been great. She would have nailed it. So, you know, she would be my top choice. I think it could have been a completely different show, obviously, but if Harrison and Doggett teamed up, I think it would have been interesting to see her kind of bring that to it, but also branch out and have their own cases and sort of leave the callbacks behind eventually. Maybe a couple episodes and then they start investigating on their own.
Maybe tone it down a bit as you go along, maybe. She's more of a character than somebody like Miller and Einstein, isn't she? Because they're very transparently just weird doppelgangers who only exist for the context of Babylon, really. I know they come back a couple of times, but like, she's a bit more believable and grounded than those characters are. So it's not a completely outlandish suggestion.
Yeah.
No, and as I say, I think it's mainly just like it's not her as a person. I think it's the way she's written. I'd say I think the green aspect is probably the best way to describe it, because, you know, the X-Files is you know, really it's quite heavy stuff, you know, and it's you know, and it's, again, it goes back to the whole Doggett needs someone who's actually going to be able to like be his equal, and this is like more of a mentorship, and you know, that's not really going to be great in the stuff when you're dealing with super soldiers that can shed their own skin and cut people off and you know, grow their own vertebrae and stuff like that. You know, it's a difficult task, you know. So,
but potentially an interesting character arc. I mean, she would have a lot of space to grow.
That is true.
She would. I mean, she'd be fine now. She would be fine now. I think you know, later in these days would be a good agent, really good agent. So,
well, also you could tie it in with, because obviously the implication is that Kirsch has appointed her. She begged Kirsch for the appointment, is what she says, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, maybe you could have implied that Kirsch was kind of keeping her down there to annoy or frustrate Doggett. You know, that could have been interesting.
As terrible as Kirsch is, I do appreciate his subterfuge. You know, just like, how can I aggravate these agents today? Yeah. Devious. They go out and investigate in the field. She says bile. What do you think it is? Maybe bile? She has no idea what bile is.
I think it's this kind of thing I was talking about when I said it feels a bit Pavlovian. It's like, okay, it's a Tombs reference, but like, it's fun on a superficial kind of level, isn't it? But like, beyond that, not really. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It goes to portray how eager she is, though, that she's just really excited. You know, so.
But I suppose an episode like Detour would be an example of an episode that kind of is reminiscent of earlier cases and things, but becomes its own distinctive case, yeah? Whereas this one never really takes off for me as an investigation, as a case. It's just very forgettable.
Mm.
Well, there's not a whole lot of investigating, is there? Except for Mulder.
Yeah.
So, you know, that doesn't
I mean,
help.
instead of like Conversation on the Rock or Conversation in the Woods or whatever it's called, you know, it would have been nice to maybe have Layla and Doggett actually have more of a conversation down there, you know, just to kind of get under the Doggett skin a little bit more.
What, to kind of tease out what he's thinking about and how he's...
That's a great idea.
Almost like, you know, almost like Doggett saying, you know, speaking to Harrison about, you know, why were you so eager to do this, and then just get more of an idea of what the X-Files was about for Doggett, and to really kind of under that, and as you say, what Doggett is feeling right now. That would have been good to do that, but it's very kind of just straightforward, as you say, in those bits. It's like, I need to climb up here, I need to get out there, you know. It doesn't really do much apart from, as you say, Carl, with Harrison actually working it out, you know. So it would have been nice to have something a bit more in depth down in that basement bit.
That's a great idea.
Do you feel like they have to service too many characters in a way? Because for me, what feels a bit, and I understand why it's been done, and I understand the appeal of it, but like in the previous episode, we've had Mulder 86, as he says, or, you know, basically fired from the FBI. And then the very next episode, like, actually being out the FBI doesn't really seem to stop him that much, because he's able to investigate this quite easily, isn't he? Without meeting too much resistance. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, I just feel like a close focus on Doggett, for me, would have been the way to go here. But I understand why in this last Mulder Scully era standalone, as it were, you want to really focus on them too. So you end up kind of split a few different ways for me. But I feel like Mulder should have been having to work a bit harder to really get to grips with things here.
Yeah, I think the pregnancy stuff probably works quite well. You know, the fact he's watching too much Oprah, and it's kind of reassessing the stuff with Mulder where, you know, the X-Files isn't the bee's knees anymore. It's more a case of like he's just after his ordeal through season 8 that he's come to accept that. I think where it gets a bit tired is when he goes to the scene and you've got Skinner looking, and then they find the car 30 miles away, and Mulder's the only one that stays there and stuff like that, which you didn't necessarily need. You know, it takes up some of the agency away from Doggett getting out of there, but I can see why they're doing that kind of handover.
That's what I understand that exactly. Yeah, I understand logically why you'd want to do that. Yeah, but
it's things like it's the monster of the week kind of element, isn't it? When Scully's actually on the phone to Mulder and saying about all of the stuff that's happening. You know, there's all the venom, and Scully's doing all that investigation work, which, you know, because there isn't anyone else to do that really, and Mulder's sitting there and eating his sunflower seeds and chucking them out of the car. It's just that feels a little bit like, is that really kind of wasting a bit of time with them a little bit, you know? So, but yeah, what do you think to the scene then with when he first finds was it Styles, isn't it? And he starts talking to him with Kirsch. Do you think that was really warranted as well? Apart from obviously finding the keychain.
When Mulder passes himself off as Kirsch, is that the one you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad. And he's quite a good actor, that is Zach Grenier. I recognise him from a few other things, like 24, and I actually watched a film he was in last night. I watched Zodiac. I'm sure you've seen that. But he's got quite a beefy role in that. Yeah, no, it's fine. I find what I was going to comment on, you mentioned earlier, the first appearance of Mulder and Scully, where Mulder talks about watching a lot of Oprah and all of that. and they talk about Scully feeling strange about leaving work, and I enjoy all that aspect to it. The bit I don't really enjoy is the boy or girl exchange. I find a bit cringy. And it's like, I don't find these characters that interesting when they're doing stuff like this. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they're a bit of a kind of a pale shadow of what they used to be like as characters. I feel the same with the Mad About You stuff in Empedocles. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I'm going to mention another scene as well. I'm not quite sure where it was now, but the baby shower. It's like, where did Scully get all these friends from? There must be Margaret Scully's like friends, not
Scully's
hers.
Paying them to turn up. Second. Sarah is back. Welcome back, Sarah.
Sorry, I got pulled down into Prohibition Tunnel by a strange cryptid, and
okay, well, we've just been eating sunflower seeds.
I climbed out. It's fine.
We just kept talking in your absence. But, yeah, I can't remember where you left. I can't remember at what point you disappeared.
I don't know. I don't remember anything about this episode.
So we were asking about the Mulder scenes. We're basically talking through the Mulder scenes, and
all right,
and the Oprah. Is the boy girl thing a bit too much?
Okay, I have something to add to that, Kurt, to ask Sarah actually, because Tony was mentioning this to me. We were talking about you, Sarah, on our Vienna recording. We were talking about hopefully one day. Well, we were talking about Raid Runners again. We were saying one day we'll get her to watch it again, and it'll just click for her. I think we got to a 4 because I dropped down to a 9 so that Sarah would go up to a 4. Anyway, I think what Tony said was he suspected that the latter part of the season would be a bit more to your liking because there's a bit more Mulder and Scully together. Some of this cutesy interaction about the baby and all of that, he felt would be more up your street, as it were. Or do you feel like it's just not the kind of thing you want to see from them?
Well, in this episode in particular, I really enjoy to see Mulder and Scully have fun together. It's been a while since they've had that opportunity, and just hanging out and being silly together. I always love those moments, and I think it's cute that Mulder's so enthusiastic about it all, and he's really trying. Bless him. And I do appreciate that Scully is worried about Doggett. I think that it's nice that she's kind of developed this other kind of partnership with him, of that she trusts him and that she feels like she should have his back, and that's important to her. So I like that development and that arc. I can appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I do enjoy the lighter aspect of this episode because, as I said before, it harkens back to the fun parts of some of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, and there's stuff like when they're in the autopsy bay and Mulder's saying it seems like old times and that kind of thing, where it's like, I can understand what they're going for there. It's kind of like Scully's only really been on maternity leave for 15 minutes at this point. She was doing autopsies last week, so it doesn't have as much weight as I think they think it does. But I understand.
But the doctors told her to. Doctors told her to, Carl. You've got to listen
that's
to
good as well. And it's
advice.
good that Doggett is just like, that's a good idea. I think that's quite nicely played, to be honest, at the start of the episode. But the fact that they were doing this, she was doing this stuff so recently means that it doesn't feel as much of a throwback. I suppose the fact that it's the two of them down there. Do you guys feel like me about some of these weird camera angles and things that Spotnitz uses? Like, do you notice them watching the episode or not?
The one that you mentioned, the spinning room one, I thought that was quite a nice, effective shot. I don't mind the eyes one when it went blurry, but I maybe overused a touch, but I'm not as concerned as it sounds like you are. But I did like that rotational shot.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say concerned. I just noticed it quite a bit. And I think, again, I can understand why it is like it is, because on the commentary he says you get this chance, and there are two ways you can go. You can either play it very simply, or you can try and do all the cool stuff you ever wanted to do. And he sort of went down the second route, and he said there were things like normally on the X-Files, all the insert shots would be done by a second unit who would come in and do 2 days at the end of the main block of filming, but he was determined to get all those insert shots done with his first unit. Do you know what I mean? So close-ups of objects or whatever. And he eventually kind of realized it was impractical. And he had to kind of give up on doing all the things he wanted to do. But like, no, I understand the enthusiasm of wanting to do all these intricate camera moves and all of that. I just find they take me out of it a little bit sometimes when they're a bit too obvious and ostentatious. Yeah, but it's not a big thing. Yeah, Sarah, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it didn't bother me too much. I know I keep calling back to this, but in Quagmire, you've got that shot of the monster's point of view a few times, you know. And even in, is it Detour? Do they show, you know, from the, I feel like when they're creeping through the house maybe, or through the woods, possibly. They have the point of view shots too, but I agree that those are done better than here.
So sometimes when the camera really swoops in, it's like
right.
The ones I was talking about here.
Yeah. There was one in the corridor shot. I don't know the one where it spins round, but there's in the corridor shot. It almost do like that Jaws thing, and I mean they don't quite go down that route, but the lens seems to flare up a little bit. So there is moments where it's like it's not consistent. I think is probably the way.
And there's one from above Harrison, isn't there? Where it like zooms down at her. Do you know what I mean? That's one of those.
I gotta give him points for being creative, though. I mean, it's his first time out, so like, of course, you want to try things and figure out what works, and it takes a while to kind of do that. So when you just have one chance,
no, I agree.
You know, this is I can understand how it does take you out of the episode, but
and I think maybe the end of the episode in terms of the. You know, when Mulder comes down into the lair or whatever you call it and is directing Doggett to shoot. Maybe that's done a bit better, I think. That's quite a nice scene, actually. Yeah,
that was an intense moment. I like that part a lot.
Well, I like it. I like it because Doggett actually stops using the word agent. Mulder. It's like, yes, finally, someone's just saying the name.
I was thinking about this. Do you think it would have been better with Doggett and Scully if they'd have been on first name terms? A bit more. Like, obviously, normally you calling someone by their first name, it's a sign of familiarity. But in this context, because of Mulder and Scully's particular history, if he'd have called her Dana all the time and she'd have called him John all the time, it would have made... You don't think so?
No.
Because I agree with Kurt. Agent Doggett all the time sounds a bit stilted, doesn't it? Agent Scully all the time sounds a bit stilted.
So when Skinner does say John in one of the episodes, and it's like it does feel better, but it's whether or not you intersperse it with a couple of things, even if it was just Doggett, or you know what I mean, just drop the actual agent bit, because it just becomes a bit Agent Mulder, Agent Scully, Agent Doggett, Agent Reyes, and it's not as bad as My Baby, but it's up there.
No, that irked me too, especially in that first scene. I was kind of like, twitch. I twitch.
Just call him Poopy Head. Be fine.
Did you have any thoughts on Skinner in this episode, Sarah?
Would you like to find the missing 9 minutes?
I would. I like his and Mulder's interactions. Always. I love his and Mulder's dynamic. They're just, still trying to rein in Mulder. He's out there looking for Doggett, doing everything he needs to do, following the book.
He's not out there, Sarah. He's not out there. He's not out there. I remember that bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, Skinner's great. The few minutes he's in this episode, obviously. I always think Skinner's great, so that's nothing new.
Apparently, one of the other things that ended up on the cutting room floor, so 9 minutes, some of which included Skinner, but also Scully calling Danny was a bit of an in-joke that was cut out. Obviously, that she used to call Danny, and Mulder used to call Danny a lot in the earlier seasons, but there was a scene of that here that Spotnitz had to lose for time, which is a shame. I think what he said, and I don't know if that's what you heard, Kurt, but it's like he said cutting the first 7 minutes was really hard, and then cutting the first 7 minutes was fairly straightforward, and then there were 2 minutes he really hated to cut out as well. I think is what he said.
Right. I think a lot of writers and directors, when they do TV shows or movies and stuff that they cut out, one of the things that the reasons why you don't say the goodbyes in phone calls is because it adds viable seconds. So what a lot of people find is that they'll start writing stuff in saying, okay, yeah, thanks, bye. And then, they realise that they need to find 2 minutes, and those are the first things. And then eventually they just turn around and go, well, they're going to get cut anyway, so then why put them in? So, which I find interesting in that kind of old. I mean, school's different now, isn't it, with streaming televisions? But when you dedicate to like 42 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever it is, those extra minutes count, and cutting your darlings are an unfortunate part of it, isn't it? Really, killing your darlings, yeah.
What do you guys make of the episode originally being titled as "The Dream Whose Sleep"?
Dream. Say that again. The Dream Whose.
Yeah. The Dream Whose Sleep. WHOSE. Possessive. The Dream Whose Sleep.
It makes no sense to me either, so I'm glad they changed it to something comprehensible.
It sounds more like a Twin Peaks.
That's a good point.
Episode title.
Yeah, X-Files Wiki mentioned that was the... Before it was televised, this episode was also known as The Dream Whose Sleep.
I didn't know that.
So,
I don't like that title because I don't understand it.
No.
First of all.
I don't either. I agree.
Do you think an episode, like obviously the episode's called Alone, but then Doggett is never really that alone, is he, until the very end? Like, it would have been interesting to see Doggett go out just literally by himself to investigate an X-File, wouldn't it? And like, how would that work?
I suppose we've got that in John Doe, don't we?
Yeah, but it's not like the traditional X-File where you see him take a case and then go to the first crime scene. And, what I mean?
I think that could have been interesting. I like Kurt's assessment of the conversation adjacent to the Prohibition booth.
Conversation in the Prohibition room. That's it. That's a new one. That's a new one.
I think that would have really upped it a level. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be interesting to see Doggett set out on his own and how that would play out.
Because we've never really seen much of that, have we, in the show, of like a single agent investigating? I mean, it happens in stuff like Free, doesn't it? And the odd occasion.
I suppose Via Negativa is probably the closest one, I would have thought. But he's got with Skinner at that, yeah.
I don't know, just could have been an interesting way to rework some of the familiar X-Files beats. But then I don't know how you would do that exactly.
I know. Well, I think that the X-Files in Doggett's hands is always a slightly difficult thing. Like we've mentioned before in Sure Kill and Salvage, for example, and particularly in here, is that all the X-File tropes has to be done by somebody else, and a lot of season 8 doesn't have some of the stuff that you would have in earlier seasons, because Doggett is very much kind of portrayed as this guy who just get the case done. So you get a lot of cases like this where the monster isn't necessarily really explained. It's kind of like just left there. And I think that happens quite a lot in season 8 because of that. So Doggett's ones, they're definitely more like centered around sort of just the uneasiness and the darkness of stuff. So it's something, I know we've mentioned this in Empedocles, has probably been mentioned as well, about that nature of evil and the Frank Black Millennium kind of thing that Doggett could have. So it's just it would needed to be done quite significantly differently, because you don't have that kind of science background. He's just a background as a Marine and a cop, so it's a different kind of vibe.
I don't necessarily mean even like for a run of episodes, just like one episode. It could be interesting.
Yeah, just like one. Yeah. You can definitely stick in. He's definitely a character you can stick into the middle of an episode where you're not quite sure what's going on. Yeah. He's not sure what's going on, because that's kind of that. He's that kind of character, isn't he? You can drop him into that.
So that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it could be interesting. I don't know that it would necessarily work for this particular episode, just because unless he wasn't down in that tunnel by himself for so long. Because I feel like it would be complicated to portray his point of view and his thoughts if he doesn't have somebody to bounce off of. Yeah, he doesn't have anybody to talk to, so it would just be him bumbling around for a while in this tunnel alone, half blind, and what is he gonna do down there? I don't know. But if that didn't happen and you kind of altered the plot a little bit, I think it could be interesting.
I was just thinking, I guess, for something like Patience, where obviously suddenly in that episode, Scully's like the standard bearer for the X-Files department and comes up against all these local cops or whatever. And now the interesting thing here is that Doggett, despite being like having no affinity with this stuff whatsoever, is now like flying the flag for the X-Files. Like Mulder says at the end of Vienna, like he's the only credibility this department has left, or whatever he says. It could be fun to see him having to interact with like skeptical law enforcement, who you'll kind of see him as this weirdo.
Yeah, and I do like what they do. I mean, I know this is for another week, but with the whole investigate Kirsch thing at the end of the season, which they drop, very quickly. But that would have been really good to like sort of have that emphasis for him. And I think this episode is kind of like, it's obviously portraying the fact that everyone is moving on, and Doggett's been left in that space by himself and needing the Reyes element to come in, and obviously that's setting up for 9, isn't it? Really, so I do like what they're doing with it to like really hone in on the fact that Doggett is basically holding that together, and as you say, the comment in Vienna as well. So, and he's that character that will, he will look after the thing because out of a thing of duty, really, and that's good. But I think for me, it needs a little bit more agency with that, because it's not only that, it's part of the no roar stuff, which we'll no doubt talk about in a couple of weeks.
Did y'all talk about Mulder interrogating the Stite? Is it Stite?
Herman Stite. I think we just quickly mentioned that. That's the scene where he impersonates Kirsch, yeah?
Right.
Yeah, what did you think?
Yeah.
So?
Would you have, my question is, would you have liked to have seen the scene where Skinner was furious? Because Skinner was furious, apparently.
I would like to see the scene where Kirsch finds out that Mulder has been passing himself off as him. That would have been good.
The phone call between Kirsch and Skinner. That would have been fun. Yeah, and Skinner just being completely furious. And I love how Mulder just so casually does it with a little bit of a smile. It's like, my name's Kirsch, Alvin Kirsch.
Yeah, because what's he going to do? I suppose it is probably an illegal act, isn't it? Really, impersonating a federal officer. But
yeah,
I mean, he's already been sacked, so like he probably doesn't care that much, does he? At this point.
No, he doesn't. That was pretty hilarious. I liked that scene a lot.
Is it as hilarious as the Fight the Future stuff at the end of the episode? That's like the big thing people remember from Alone, I feel like, is that whole Antarctica discussion. Do you think?
All right, okay.
No, that's far superior. But yeah, okay. Much more.
What is the Antarctica stuff? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Can we talk about like the monster itself quickly? Stites is this biologist. He's got the Sixth Extinction book, another throwback. So he's like this biologist who studies cryptids and has manufactured, bred this strange new species of creature that is a salamander man. So that's a thing. Venomous. And yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, this is not the first time we've had like cryptid stuff on the X-Files. We had Shapes and Quagmire and all of that stuff. But if you could choose to be any cryptid, any kind of human monster hybrid, Carl, what kind of monster would you want to be?
So wait, when you say cryptid, what does that encompass exactly? Like,
I mean, well, it could any kind of like human monster
any
hybrid.
Animal.
Like, you could just go completely supernatural and just be like a werewolf.
Okay.
Or you could be like, Sasquatch.
Okay, so a cryptid is any animal whose existence or survival is disputed, right? Okay, I would like to be the Mongolian death worm, I think. Yeah.
Did you just Google that?
That was just came up, it just sprang out. Or the Loch Ness Monster, like human Loch Ness Monster hybrid would be good. I mean, I was thinking like a cat has quite a charmed life, doesn't it? Because we've recently got a couple of kittens. And, like literally, all they do is like sleep all day, and like occasionally like wrestle with each other. and they get fed by their masters, or whatever, the servants. So I'd like to be a human-cat hybrid. That's my answer.
Fair. I think that's a good choice.
Kurt,
what about you?
You need to search this. A Ningen.Ningen.
Oh,
I think I look like one anyway.
Oh, yeah. Got it. It's an aquatic, humanoid, whale-like creature. Oh, man.
That'll do, mate.
I would like to be an aquatic menace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I want to be Big Blue, or the Hodag. That could be fun.
The Hodag, I never heard of that
the
before.
Hodag is that.
Tell me about it, Sarah.
Yeah, it's the mythological creature from Rhinelander, Wisconsin. Everything in Rhinelander, Wisconsin is about the Hodag. They've got, everything is called. They've got the Hodag car sales place. They've got Hodag coffee. Got Hodag everything. But it's this creature with a lot of spikes and horns that terrorizes the North Woods. It's
funny because looking at this Wikipedia list of cryptids, there's so much X-Files kind of resonance here. Is it the same list you're looking at, Kurt? Because you've got like the Jersey Devil on there, which looks absolutely nothing like what we see in the X-Files episode Jersey Devil. You also got stuff like the Yeti and the Bigfoot. Got the Chupacabra on there.
I like the Loveland frog. It's like a 4-foot frog.
Could have been a good episode. Obviously, you got stuff like Loch Ness Monster, which is similar to Quagmire and stuff like that. So yeah, even some of these locations, like which I know have been referred to on the show, like Lake Champlain. I can't remember which episode that's talked about in. Is that in Quagmire? Yeah,
I think it's Quagmire where she talks about yeah, all those fun things. Yeah, it's fun though, and like this salamander creature is fascinating because then at the end we discover it is in fact Stites himself.
Well, Layla Harrison puts it together.
Yeah, but then when he's walking down the stairs, he's the salamander man, and then he answers the door. How does he get the clothes on so quickly? I'm curious. Did he just keep a set of clothes by the door just in case? I don't know. I think it would have been way more fun if he just opened the door naked.
And how exactly did Layla Harrison make the breakthrough? That was what I was wondering as well.
Obviously, she's read the X-Files.
No, I know. It just seemed to come out of nowhere a little bit.
I mean,
it's a Mulder leap. It's good. No, she's learning off the best.
It's true.
He is it is him or whatever she says. Yeah, it's great. It's a great moment.
Yeah.
He is it. Yeah.
I like the end scene when they're at the hospital with Harrison because she is us. She is all of us getting to meet the Mulder and Scully.
I think I'm more Doggett, if I'm being honest. I'm the one looking going, yeah, I'm just going to walk off into the sunset now.
It's not... Yeah. I mean, but, no, it's true. I like it up to a point. I think this isn't the kind of repartee that made Mulder and Scully great characters, though, is it? It's kind of cute, but it's not the kind of thing that make... do you know what I mean? It's not... It's just... It's a bit thin. It's a bit thin gruel.
I know what you mean, but I don't necessarily agree. No, I mean, I love their banter. It is what makes them fun, and I like when it...
But this isn't the way they would normally banter, is it?
Not really. It's totally Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. It's all them.
No, like I said, I like it up to a point. I think, I don't think of it as one of the great scenes in the show's history or anything like that.
I mean, I was joking about the Doggett thing, but I really like that. Just the way that scene is portrayed with Doggett. I think that for me is the memorable thing I think more of than the actual thing about the joke about how did he get back is great. Love it. But maybe it is a bit too cutesy for me, but I do just like that angsty feel that when you've got Doggett, just he's not really, he is alone. That's the whole point of it. And and just the fact that, we're left in no man's land a little bit with what's going to happen next. I do like that. I do like that as an ending.
My favorite line out of all of it, yeah. My favorite line, I think I texted it to you guys before. And Mulder's like, and then you were frozen. And then she's like, and then you were frozen. And I hugged you and you were not frozen. That's the last line.
It does say, Mulder does say you saw it, doesn't he? You saw it. No, well, I didn't see it. You did. You saw it.
And then it goes back to the whole. Remember when we were all trying to figure out when we did Fight the Future Minute?
Yeah.
If she actually says it or not, because in some of the closed captioning, she does say I saw it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then one of them she doesn't, maybe.
Yeah, I can't exactly remember. I was on that episode on the Fight the Future Minute, but I can't remember. It's different depending on if you stream it or if you have a certain version of the DVD or the Blu-ray or something. So yeah, if you had to watch it with the subtitles, and depending on where you saw it, you'd have a different reading on that scene because of the captions. Yeah. So
still up for debate.
I think I could never hear anything. Even if it says I saw it on the closed caption, I could never hear any indication that she'd actually said that on the screen on the soundtrack.
Yeah. Okay. So how did they get home from Antarctica?
It doesn't matter, does it? We don't need to know every single thing about stuff like that.
Okay, Chris Carter.
Yeah.
We don't need to know. They got home. It's fine.
Skinner got them. He came to get them.
I mean, how did Cigarette Smoking Man get to Tunisia? Did he fly by helicopter? Did he travel on Air Force One? Who knows?
And the aliens took him. All right. Should we go to the mailbag? Are we done with this?
I think we've flogged a dead cryptid with this. Yeah.
I think we've done all right, considering that we were a bit concerned.
Considering none of us watched this episode and don't remember it at all, I think we did all right.
Sorry for anyone who really loves this episode. We did all right though. I think we've done a good job.
I don't know about that.
Let's go to the mailbag.
I agree. All right, mailbag. Tony Black says, a bit of a curate's egg, no mistake, but a good one. Clue is in the title, but having Doggett forced to investigate a case on his
Todd.
On his own. What is that? On his
Todd.
Todd? Is
on
that a
Yeah,
on his own? Yeah, that's what that means.
So that's a British thing?
Must
All right,
be.
there you go. On his Todd is a smart storytelling angle. Kind of reminds me a bit of Folie à Deux in a way, not just because it's a penultimate episode before a whopping big finale. Gets a bit drowned out by all the Fight the Future snowplow stuff, fun as that in-joke is, but there's a solid Monster of the Week here with a twist of exploring Doggett's workplace isolation.
But see, he doesn't investigate a case on his own, does he? That's the thing. He's got a partner. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, it seems like it isn't...
Yeah.
But he's got a partner that's not up to covering his back.
Well, no, that's true, but it's different. It seems different to what Tony's saying there to me. But
yeah, I can see what you both mean.
It does explore his workplace isolation in a roundabout sort of way, I suppose. Yeah.
He is the one who kind of knows the X-Files now.
Yeah.
He's sort of familiar with how it works, more so than Layla Harrison.
Even though she solves the case, as we've said.
I guess. So he's kind of isolated in that way, I suppose. Paige says, one of my faves from the season and one of my favorites to rewatch as well. There's Layla serving as the fan's perspective, which is terribly on the nose, but Jolie Jenkins does that with such a fresh-faced appeal. It also has one of the creepier monsters we've had in some time, one that inspires genuine fear.
I don't know about the genuine fear for me, but that's all very subjective, of course, but I don't really get that from it.
I wasn't very scared, but if I turned the brightness on I was watching on my laptop, if I turned the brightness down, I think it's a bit more scary. If you can't really see it too well. The CGI doesn't need to have the brightness up that much. Okay, Chris Knowles says, isolation, separation, and facing primordial terrors alone is a major through line in Frank's solo standalones. We get 3 of them this season via Negativa, The Gift, and Alone, arguably Medusa as well. And then Liam says, probably one of the most meta of all the 8th season episodes. A glorious meditation on the way the characters of Mulder and Scully have almost become mythologized by their peers and fans like Layla Harrison. Each of the protagonists is facing a universe of their own terrors. Doggett, no longer sure of his place in the FBI with the imminent maternity leave of Scully. Mulder's literal discombobulation post-abduction, and Scully's fear of the threats massing against her unborn child. The monster of the week becomes almost incidental when played out against the ongoing interplay between our characters, in turn suggesting how Mulder and Scully have outgrown their traditional roles in relation to their work. In the most literal of senses, their future is no longer tied to the X-Files, the unit, nor the X-Files, the series. In that respect, it's a curate's egg, feeling somehow a series of scenes glued together with expectation, recidivism of familiar paths. A very palpable sense of the sands shifting beneath our feet reinforces the sense that whatever the future holds, the series is evolving into a very different beast than the previous 7 years.
Yep, so I like that. It's a nice comment from Liam, as ever. Interesting that the phrase curate's egg has cropped up a couple of times there. Tony mentioned it as well in his comment.
I don't know what that
means.
Like
good in parts.
Sarah, I'm glad you do that. I'm the same. I'm going, what the hell's going on here?
Well, no, it just means good in parts, doesn't it? Let's have a quick. Let's Google that. Have you never heard that? It surprises me. Hang on, let's see. Dictionary definition: a thing that is partly good and partly bad. So yeah, like I said.
Oh.
So yeah, when Liam says like a series of scenes glued together, that's kind of what I was feeling too, sort of. And I feel like he's right to say that the Monster of the Week becomes almost incidental, but I do feel it could have been stronger, and it would have been less of a curate's egg if that had been the case. But yeah, there we go.
It actually reminded me of that comment that I couldn't think of earlier, of what I wanted to ask you guys about. So we've got all through, the first couple of seasons, Mulder and Scully talk about how they're the laughing stock of the Bureau, and, the X-Files is this joke and not taken seriously. But then now you've got these agents cropping up who are fans of Mulder and Scully, who have followed their work, and I just think it's an interesting dynamic. All right, we've got a couple more excellent comments in the basement. If y'all want to go head over to the basement group and check those out. But I think that about does it, right?
Yeah, I think solid episode. Like I said, very enjoyable, but kind of insubstantial for me, which means that I enjoy it every time I watch it, and then kind of forget about it until the next time. That's nothing to be sniffed at. That's fair, I think.
Yeah, same enjoyable watch. In a season that I find really fascinating and really enjoy, it's part of the cohesive run of episodes, so I wouldn't ever dream of skipping it or anything like that at all. I would agree that it's kind of in the bottom half, maybe the 16-17 mark in the season. But that being said, as 8 is one of my favourite seasons, then that isn't by no means a bad thing. And yeah, just generally enjoyable, and I do like the kind of the where we are leaving Doggett. Really, I like the final moment. I think that always gets to me, and as I say, the handing over of the medallion and the Apollo 11 keychain is really effective. The fact that that really tests to Doggett's character, so I like that as well. So yeah, and of course we've got 2 outstanding episodes coming next week. So next 2 weeks. So yeah, so it's a nice little almost like palate cleanser before we get into the nitty gritty of those 2 episodes.
A lot to look forward to. Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely one. You know how I like my rewatchability scale, highly rewatchable. Solid, even if the monster is not quite there for me, solid effort on the monster. I appreciate that it kind of throws back to the earlier episodes and still has that very X-Files kind of feel to it. I enjoyed that about it. Kind of a nice nostalgic trip into the Prohibition tunnels. So, yeah.
Agreed.
Kurt, where can we find you online, sir?
In the Twitter sphere is best place for me. Find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. It's RMULDRAKE. You'll find all of my links to the episodes that I showrun or co-host on, which includes a Yellow Jacket podcast, a Red Dwarf podcast, the Star Trek Picard podcast, which we're currently doing season 2. Obviously this and The Time Is Now as well. So yeah, find my links all on there on Twitter at rmuldrake.
On Twitter at CKJ Sweeney. Also keeping an eye on things in the X-Files basement, XCast fan group on Facebook. Those are the main places really. Looking forward to being on Existence in a couple of weeks to end the season. When's the next time the three of us are going to be together? It might not be until early season 9, mightn't it? Because we've got some post season 8 stuff coming, haven't we? But it's going to be like, I think me and Sarah are going to be on one episode. Kurt's going to be on another episode. So yeah, maybe we won't, do this again until Nothing Important Happened Today, part 1. Which would be a big one.
Which is basically big shocker. That'll be Nothing Important Happened Today, part 1. Let's go home.
That's going to be interesting. That's going to be a tough one.
It will.
Yeah.
There's going to be an interesting reappraisal on that one. Put it that way. So because part 2 is good, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Part 2 is better for sure. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
You can find me online at Sarah L. Blair on Twitter and at Instagram at author.sarah.blair. And you can find the XCast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Instagram at the XCast pod, and as Carl mentioned, in the X-Files Basement XCast podcast fan group on Facebook.
Yay.
So, I did it. It's not like the first time I've done it perfectly. The first try. Amazing. I always get it mixed up. So
I never attempt it, so I wouldn't know where to begin.
And that'll do it for us, I think. As always, it's been a pleasure, fellas. And I will look forward to hanging out with you again soon.
Absolutely.
Until next time, always remember, trust no one.
100 years since Nosferatu first terrified audiences on the big screen.
30 years since Francis Ford Coppola gave us Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And 10 years since Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp.
Vampire Videos is a podcast taking a look at this iconic blood-sucking monster on film and television.
I'm Dan Owen.
And I'm Hugh McStay.
And we're here to guide you through a century of vampirism on film. From Hollywood's golden age with Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula,
to the more lurid hammer horrors of the 60s and 70s starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Through to the 80s boom in vampires, which brought these creatures of the night into the modern age.
And everything this century's had to offer us, from foreign and independent films, spoof comedies, and even teenage love stories. Yes, I'm talking about Twilight.
We aim to cover it all, one bite at a time.
So join us on a voyage into the depths of vampire cinema, old and new, with weekly guests offering their own insights and expertise. And why not follow us on Twitter at VampVideos?
A proud part of the We Made This podcast network. Subscribe now to Vampire Videos, and thanks for listening.
The XCast and X-Files podcast was created by Tony Black and is produced and hosted by Carl Sweeney, Sarah Blair and Kurt North.
You can find the podcast on Twitter at the X_cast, on Facebook by typing in the XCast, and in our group, X-Files Basement, the XCast podcast fan group, and on Instagram at the XCast pod.
Don't forget, you can support the show by becoming a member on Patreon. Our patrons get early access to episodes, behind-the-scenes chats with our hosts and a thriving community of X-Files, and other premium interviews and specials. To find out more and subscribe, you can go to patreon.com/thexcast. That's patreon.com/thexcast.
We are also part of the We Made This podcast network, full of popular culture shows, including our Millennium series, The Time Is Now. You can find all of our shows at our website, wemadethispod.com, or via Twitter at wemadethispod.
Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.